Hi, Bruce Helander with Buzz TV. We're here in beautiful Palm Beach on Worth Avenue at the Sarah Gavlak Gallery, who also has a branch in Los Angeles. Sarah Gavlak is a dealer who is considered by most to be a visionary, runs one of the most professional galleries in Palm Beach history, and brings some of the most innovative work to this town that anyone has ever seen. No one thought a gallery this sophisticated could really be this successful on Worth Avenue, but she proved them wrong and has brought in wonderful things. We're here with Rob Wynne in his solo show, which incorporates glass and mirrored objects and fanciful objects. Behind us is a composition that may remind you of butterflies. And in fact, that's part of the title. As you go around the gallery, each work is very intriguing. Many years ago, he was interested, like lots of artists, in incorporating language in letter forms into his work. And that has evolved into many of the things that you see here. Every artist has a kind of evolutionary quality to finding their direction. And you told me an interesting story when you first started making these reflective surfaces about your footsteps. And I'm wondering if you could elaborate on that. It seems
well, it was a curious situation. I was doing an exhibition with Holly Solomon called Sleepwalking. And it had no glass components whatsoever. It was all silkscreen and embroidery and text and painted surfaces. Entire gallery was wallpapered. But I had the idea that I wanted to have a cast of my feet made in blown glass that I wanted to be reflective and mirrored. So I found myself going out to Urban Glass in Brooklyn and was put in touch with some technicians, and through their knowledge and us working together, we were able to make a beautiful pair of feet. But while I was there, I said, well, could I try ladling something? And they acted like I was sort of a crazy person, because I was had never been in a glass studio. And they handed me the ladle, which I then put into the furnace, was suited up and gloved up against the heat. And it was very hot, very heavy, and I was a little unstable as I was carrying it over to the marver. I slipped and the glass fell on the floor, and the kids and assistants around me said, "Don't worry, it's nothing, it's fine." And I said, "No, save it, it's perfect. I want all the pebbles, I want all the information on the ground and the feeling of that blob." And they actually got it up off the floor and moved it into an annealing furnace, which cools it down. And that became really the first piece that I made myself.
a wonderful story.
So it worked, and it got me sort of hooked on the alchemical-like magic of being in that environment and using the glass in very personal ways and not in traditionally glass blowing or technically correct ways. So kind of manipulated the material, and it's gone into
It's a wonderful story, and I think it has some parallels to the accidents that Jackson Pollock discovered quite by accident, a drip here or whatever.
Because I make all my work, ultimately, as we spoke earlier when we walked through the show, I assemble everything on the floor. Not that I'm comparing myself to Jackson Pollock, but nevertheless, there is a different relationship you have, or at least I have in my practice, when I'm on the floor doing the work, as opposed to easel painting or being, being parallel with the wall.
Mm-hmm. Well, when we did walk around, I was really quite surprised and amazed at the laborious task of, and there is no arbitrary notion to the work other than obviously when it's been made, and there's certain circles that are big and small and so on and so forth. And we're both collage artists, or were at one time,
Exactly.
and this is a kind of a collage with glass. But the idea that it needs to be so exacting, and that you explained how you would take the first piece of glass off and you would paint a number 1 and then put that aside, and then it seems to me you put down a piece of paper,
right,
and then you're able to cut everything out so that when it goes on the wall, There's not too many mistakes that could be made.
It's a roadmap. It's a template which enables the pretty straightforward installation of the pieces, because some of them have upwards of 1,000 components in them, and it can get confusing or dizzying if it's not done very carefully. That said, I rage against perfection. I, like Truman Capote, who said about someone, if they weren't so perfect, they'd be perfect.
That's wonderful.
Which is hard in the glass shop, because you have to, sort of like being a baker as opposed to a cook, you have to respect certain parameters of the technique in order for it not to break. You don't want broken dots or broken letters, so you have to respect that aspect of it. But that's about the only thing I respect, is the temperature. Everything else I work against technique. The first glass pourings I did, I was very interested in doing text. So I realized I could pour letters freeform and then have them be put together into either a single word or a phrase. And I did those for a number of years, but as I got more confident of working in that material, I wanted to turn my attention to some form of abstraction. And I thought that, well, on a lot of conceptual levels, glass is made of sand and silica, which is related to water, and it's liquid, which sort of feels like hot water or hot honey almost. So I wanted to see if I could force the glass to become kind of gesturally related to movements of water or air, which is the concept of this show, which is H2O, pardon me. Then I thought, well, how can I figure out how to do this? Because, you know, it's like, I can't make glass water, and it's not a frozen pond, it's liquid. So I'm starting with a liquid, the molten glass, which is going to harden and then want to reference water. So I started looking at 18th century Japanese woodblocks, which gave me a real insight into how to understand the graphic application, the visualization graphically of water. Because if you look at some of those Japanese prints, they're really marvelous in terms of how they form the parts that make up a wave or a crashing waterfall or a pond or a simulation of water swirling. So that gave me the inspiration, the visual kind of background that I needed to visualize how I could make the glass act in that way. And they became multi-componented.
And of course, I think another ingredient that's very unusual is that in all of your work, basically, it is reflective. So, you know, in many ways, when you're examining the work, you see yourself.
And exactly. As Beatrice Wood said, I saw myself see myself. So there's a lot of, I think at least when I look at art, even myself, not my own, but in a museum or a gallery, I put part of myself into the experience of looking. I think it's just part of the natural aspect relationally that you have when you look at something. You figure out what it means to you, you try to figure it out, you think about it. So in a lot of the work in the show, even the Mylar drawings, the cloud piece, which has actual tempered mirror in it, in addition to the hand mirrored components, you have the ability to see yourself reflected and distorted in the activity of looking at what you're looking at.
So it's almost interactive in a way. Yeah, delightful.
Yeah.
So what seems to be around the corner? I mean, you've got so many things cooking, and you're shipping works around the world, and people are excited about the work.
I think myself, like a lot of artists, are struggling with how to make art relevant in today's world. I'm kind of taking a little bit of a pause. I have a lecture in Boston and a show coming up in Philadelphia, and I'm you know, to be honest, I'm not sure. I don't know that I want to keep making butterflies in today's environment. I mean, I think I need to be true to who I am as an artist, but I think I also need to find a voice which is more in line with the situation that we're all in.
Well, you're not the only one. I'm interviewing Shepard Fairey at Wynwood next week,
there you go,
who has become right there in his work activist, right under all of the other things that he does.
In fact, I almost need my phone to remember, but I think I can remember. But I think that all the marvelous people that supported Hillary and that her sign said, "We're with her," maybe we should start saying, "We're with us." We are with us, because I think that a community idea is what's going to.
Well, there you are. I may have to quote you on that.
Do it.
So, folks, part Jackson Pollock, part Pancake Man, part Jack Frost. Sounds like a win-win situation to me. Right here at the Sarah Gavlak Gallery in beautiful Palm Beach on Worth Avenue. It's been a pleasure, and we wish you the best. Thank you so much.
Pleasure. Thanks so much, too.
You bet.
Appreciate it.